Hello and welcome to another episode of the 2KU Weekly Podcast. It is October 14th, 2024. Week 8 is now ahead of us, and we have Blockbuster Week in our rear view mirror, and boy, did it not disappoint. I'm Type A Joy 101, joined as always by Danny V and the Pig Bear. Good to have you back for at least the full show this time, Danny. How's your weekend?
It was pretty good. How about yours?
Mine, mine was just fine. Pig Bear, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you doing?
All right. Glad to see you've recovered from the weekend. But
Yeah.
some quick headlines. Some quick headlines. Big game shaking moves happened over the weekend. Namely, the number one team in the country, Oklahoma State, falling on the road to Texas A&M. Utah putting on a dominant show against Oregon. Duke upsetting Clemson in back-to-back years, this time in double overtime. And Penn State narrowly escaping with a win in Bloomington over Indiana. We'll get things started with our stream game. We technically had two, but the focus game of that night was Oregon and Utah. The number 3 Ducks entered Salt Lake City for playing the Utes for the first time as Pac members. Utah was expected to undergo some rough patches, but we're probably the most optimistic of the new teams joining the Pac-12 this season. Utah was expected to remain competitive throughout, but little did we know how competitive they'd be from literally the opening kickoff. Utah was controlling this game. They scored on a fumble on the first kick, on the opening kick, or the drive that followed. They recovered the ball within the red zone and scored promptly thereafter. Oregon just didn't have much of an answer through this game. 21-7 the final. Utah now 6-0. The Utes performing their best football we've seen in quite some time from this organization. We've of course seen them make a BCS Bowl in 2021, but they haven't been 6-0 to start a year since back in 2008. Danny, what are your thoughts on Utah and Oregon?
Yeah, that was a great game for Utah. They won outright. They basically were in control that entire game. So, great job on Utah for taking the helm of the Pac-12 now in year one.
Pig Bear?
The Utes are here to play. There's no secret how they're going to do it. Good job on Utah.
Big win there. Probably the biggest win in Aggie history coming up as Texas A&M entered the game number 24 and pulled off a stunner, beating Oklahoma State 24-13 in College Station. The 8.5-point underdog Aggies controlled this game and staved off an Oklahoma State comeback near the end. Texas A&M 6-0 this season and are now on top of the division. Oklahoma State now has to rebound. They are still not very far behind Texas A&M and would only need A&M to lose twice, which is still possible. A&M still has to play Oklahoma and Texas on their schedule later on. Teams who've shown to play well and could be an issue for the Aggies. But now, is A&M in the driver's seat in the Big 12, Danny?
I think they are in control. I mean, they knocked off the best team in the conference, and they came to prove how well they are. So, I definitely do think they're now in the driver's seat and can control their own destiny.
Big Bear?
Yeah, A&M's got the lead there, and just wonder if they'll continue the fight on.
Up next from Bloomington, Penn State and Indiana both entered this game 5-0. Indiana played extremely well, but Penn State got their act together when it mattered. In spite of some early struggles, the Nittany Lions would take control late to win this game 23-17. Danny?
Yeah, definitely. I do think this was a great game, great job, great win. So definitely.
Pig Bear?
Yeah, good job, Penn State getting the win.
Pink Bear, be warned. We were here. This was one of the games we streamed in the 2KU server at Pink Bear's request, mind you. Duke heading up to Clemson to take on the number seven Tigers. I believe it was Clemson playing pretty well, but I believe Duke was actually in control for most of this.
Clemson was in control for most of it, but Duke was able to recover an onside kick.
That was huge.
Huge, yeah.
The onside kick was huge. That led Duke to tying the game, taking it to overtime, and it would be the Blue Devils after an interception on the Tigers' first drive in double overtime. It led to Duke stealing it, winning back-to-back against the Tigers for the first time since 71-72. And if you don't know what happened with Duke that season, they went on to win the ACC in 72. And that was the last time they'd done that. Clemson, 7.5 point underdogs, after starting the season 4-0, have now lost 2 straight. Meanwhile, Duke, after writing their season off pretty much as ACC contenders, this win puts them right back in the race for the Coastal. Danny?
Yeah, I mean, great job from Duke for getting off the big win, the big upset. So definitely they performed well, they played well, and they proved that they could be a contender in the ACC.
Big Bear?
Disband the program. That's all I'm saying.
Clemson would now fall back behind Florida, would stay back behind Florida State, pending a result we'll get to later. Meanwhile, in Dallas, the Red River rivalry, one of the greatest in college football, it was a low-scoring affair. In fact, one would call it a snooze fest a little bit. But Oklahoma was the one who pulled it out 10-7 over Texas to improve to 6-0 and qualify for a bowl game. Danny?
Yeah, defensive battle, unlike previous Red Rivers, but great matchup and great win for Oklahoma, especially against a Texas team that's better than what the record says.
Yeah, in spite of being 2-4, this Texas team has very impressive wins, as well as losses against some higher caliber teams. Pig Bear?
Yeah, impressive win.
Meanwhile, staying in the Big 12, Missouri, losing their first game of the season 17-16 in a heartbreaker to Nebraska, who desperately needed a win to stay alive. Keep their season alive and keep them competitive within the conference. They improved to 2-4. Missouri now 5-1. Danny?
Yeah, I mean, heartbreaker for Missouri. Great job from Nebraska, especially considering that, they've been kind of down for the past few seasons, so definitely they needed this great win.
Pig Bear?
Yeah, good job. Missouri getting the win.
Nebraska won.
Nebraska, I'm sorry. Monday night, tired, long weekend.
We move on now. Deep South's oldest rivalry, Auburn, controlling this one, beating Georgia 44-33, and now the Tigers are improving to 5-1. They've very sneakily crept themselves into the SEC discussion with Alabama dive bombing as of late. A game we didn't talk about, but I think should be mentioned. They did upset Florida this week with a win. And so the Bama's now 3-3, Georgia falling out, and not a lot of confidence in Tennessee, especially after that Florida loss. It feels like Tennessee is the favorite, but they're going to be joined by one of a mosh pit of teams. Is Auburn that team, Danny?
I do think Auburn's that team. They do have a chance to win this one big.
Big Bear?
Yeah, gotta give it to Auburn here. They're probably gonna win the SEC, guys. Let's be real. They're a good quality contender here to make it to Atlanta.
Up next, let's head out to the ACC once again. We saw the result with Duke. This meant that the result with Clemson and Duke meant that Florida State and NC State would be deciding the division. And FSU was stunned in this one. 44-38 in Raleigh. NC State improves to 6-1, handing Florida State its first loss of the year. NC State rebounding from a loss earlier to what I believe was Wake Forest. Now North Carolina State in the driver's seat in the ACC Atlantic. Danny, do you think the ACC champion, one way or another, was playing in this game?
Essentially, I do think that they'll at least be a dark horse, but I do think there are other teams who might also have a claim to that potential title.
Pig Bear?
Congrats. Congrats to the Atlantic Division champions, NC State. Have fun in Charlotte, representing the Atlantic Division in your game against North Carolina or Duke.
Tobacco Road seems to be the direction for the ACC this season. Real quick, one of my favorite personal rivalries, because it was one of the first games I ever saw, Michigan and Notre Dame playing in Ann Arbor. 6-0 Michigan, we're 5-0 now, improving to 6-0 with a 36-27 win over Notre Dame. The Fighting Irish falling now to 3-3. A team that's a lot better than the record states. In being a Big Ten team, Notre Dame has had one of the most difficult schedules in college football. And with the murmurations that this might be their final season as Big Ten members, what are your thoughts on Notre Dame's performance and on Michigan's performance, Danny?
Michigan performing on top as they usually are, so not too much of a surprise. Notre Dame at least gave them a fight, so good job for the Irish at least.
Big Bear?
Notre Dame's got to step it up to return to the top class of college football.
Up next, we head out to another classic rivalry that I don't know has a name. USC and Stanford. From Palo Alto, Stanford, another team who has been struggling as of recency. This year especially, and USC only adds to that. 5-1 USC, winning 34-28 over the Cardinal. USC currently the favorites to win the Pac-12 South and likely get a date with Utah in the conference championship game. Remember last time that USC played a conference championship game? That was en route to their 2022 Natty appearance. And it was against Stanford, no less. Is USC the next best team in the Pac to Utah, Danny?
I do think they're probably the next best team. It's either them or UCLA.
Big Bear?
Yeah, USC is the next best team, I'll have to say.
Going back east to the ACC, in double overtime, Wake Forest beating Miami 47-43 to improve to 5-1. Now it's Wake and NC State who are sitting on top of the ACC Atlantic. As we already mentioned, Duke and North Carolina are both the favorites in the Coastal. How good is Tobacco Road this year, do you think, Danny?
Tobacco Road's doing pretty well this season, so I do think they have a good chance of winning big.
Pig Bear?
Shoot, call it basketball season because the ACC's running on that stretch of I-40 and I-85 in North Carolina known as Tobacco Road.
And one more oddity to talk about. How about a 4 overtime game out in Boulder? Colorado improving to 3-3 with a much needed win, 59-51 in 4 OTs over Houston. The Cougars now falling to 1-5 in their first season of Big 12 play. Danny?
Yeah, I mean, the Cougars, they're not doing as well as they all thought, but once again, they're still keeping themselves in games, so who knows what will happen next.
Pig Bear, Colorado, Houston, your thoughts?
What a game. Just glad to see 4 overtimes. Sucks that one team had to lose.
It was a great game. Real quick, let's hop into our top 25 for Week 8. A lot of shakeups going in. I'm going to let Danny touch real quick on the changes made this week.
Yeah, so a lot of changes happened in our top 25, especially with the amount of chaos that happened. As we all saw, number one fell, number three fell, number six fell, number seven fell. A lot of teams fell in our top 25,
How
and
is the top 25 ranked this week? Or or what? We changed the polling up. You want to explain that?
yeah, there's a new computer poll to this. It's a new stats poll where it takes stats, including like how well their offense is doing, how their defense is, point differential, win losses, and how they've generally been ranked throughout the season. So when you combine all those, that basically become the new CPU stat poll, and then from there, all us humans got basically an extra vote per se. And so all that stuff comes together, and that makes our new top 25.
Consider this the equivalent to a playoff poll in IRL college football. Let's get things started. It is very clear who the top two conferences are this season because they're in the entirety of the top five. 3 Big Ten teams, 2 Pac-12 teams. Starting off number 1 and 2, both hailing from the Big Ten, undefeated Michigan and Penn State. Side by side, number 3 jumping up from last week, the 6-0 Utah Utes of the Pac-12 with their big win over Oregon. Number 4 is Ohio State, who is 6-0 as well. They have a test against Iowa, which we'll talk about later. Number 5, wrapping out the top 5, the highest ranked one-loss team is Oregon, losing this week to Utah. Number 6, 5-1 Oklahoma State, your former number 1. The first change in number 1 we've seen since the preseason poll, I believe. Number 7, Cincinnati is 6-0, followed by fellow Big East opponent number 8, UCF, who is 5-1. Number 9, another Pac-12 team, 5-1 USC, who picked up the win over Stanford. And number 10, jumping 14 spots from last week, now is 6-0 Texas A&M. The Aggies leapfrog Kansas, who is 5-1 in the Big 12, sitting at number 11. 12 and 13, both ACC teams at 5-1. Florida State is at 12. NC State is at 13. That will likely change next week since NC State does have the win over Florida State. Number 14, Tennessee, highest ranked SEC squad. SEC falling back out of the top 10 with Florida's second loss. Number 15, Clemson, dropping 8 spots from last week. Number 16, undefeated UCLA, slowly creeping up the top 25. Number 17, the highest ranked team with 2 losses, or the second highest ranked team with 2 losses, is also the highest ranked non-power team. That's Boise State of the Mountain West. So that might change soon as well, because there's another team breathing down their neck. Number 18, Michigan State, sitting at 5-1. Number 19, undefeated Oklahoma with the win in the Red River over Texas. They're 6-0. Also 6-0 is number 20, Iowa. The Iowa Hawkeyes will play Ohio State. A win there might give them a Texas A&M style super boost. Number 21 also in the Big Ten. That makes 6 Big Ten teams in the top 25. That's Wisconsin sitting 21st at 5-1. They narrowly escaped with a win over Chicago. Number 22, Florida, dropping like a rock after their loss to Alabama. Number 23, Air Force, makes it into our top 25. The 7-0 Falcons are the current favorites in the Mountain West. Number 24, returning to the top 25, is Duke with the win over Clemson. And at number 25, the SEC's Auburn makes its debut. The next teams up include Liberty, Alabama, Columbia, Rice, UNC, Georgia, Arizona, BYU, Tulane, San Jose State, Virginia Tech, Indiana, Wake Forest, Louisville, New Mexico State, Stanford, and Missouri. Your thoughts on this top 25, Danny?
Yeah, a lot of interesting moves, especially within the top 10. How we have the Big 10, Pac, and Big 12, and Big East all in the top 10, but no ACC or SEC or Mountain West, so that's surprising.
Looking at the top 5, do you agree with the Big 12, Pac-12 dominance here, Danny?
I do think I agree with it for the most part. I mean, these teams have dominated the season, so as of now, they've should be the top 5 teams at least. Oregon might be a little bit in contention because I think potentially Oklahoma State should potentially be that spot.
Pig Bear, what are your thoughts on this top 25?
Interesting, but why is Alabama here? I know the computer rankings.
Alabama's not
Such.
here.
Oh yeah, my bad. That was a rough draft. But yeah, interesting top 25. I think a lot of teams undervalued for what they are.
Is there any team hovering outside the top 25 that you think should be in the top 25?
Columbia and North Carolina.
You're holding on Columbia. Funny you mentioned that. Real quick,
Very high on
I'll touch on my BCS Buster polls. There's been some shakeup from before. Currently, still the favorite, of course, the Mountain West since they had the AQ. It's Air Force sitting on top, joined by Rice in second. Again, that's stayed the same. San Jose State has climbed this poll from last week. They're sitting at third, along with Liberty, who is in fourth. Liberty has a test midweek against Southern Miss, which we'll talk about. Columbia's not there yet. They're behind Louisiana Tech, who is currently the favorites in the WAC. Then Columbia, who on one hand has the easiest route to making it, but also has the least margin of error. Columbia has a pretty easy schedule ahead of them, but they also have to contend with the fact that their resume is not going to look as good as some of these other teams ahead of them. Louisiana Tech has a date with New Mexico State. San Jose State and Air Force will play each other. The entirety of the Conference USA is still a hotly contested race. Going back to Louisiana Tech, they play the next two teams as well to contend with. They'll either play Idaho or Hawaii, potentially in a conference championship game should things align. Western Michigan and Akron are in this group as well. They're still one-loss teams in the MAC. In between them is Texas State, who has a long shot chance to make it. FIU, the lone Sun Belt rep on this list, is here. UTSA, the longest shot out of the Conference USA. James Madison took a huge hit this week after their loss as to who I believe is William & Mary.
Yeah.
William & Mary, of course, if you remember, upset a ranked Appalachian State 2 years ago en route to a championship appearance for the SoCon. Meanwhile, Boise State, while they are ranked very high, they have a very low likelihood to make a BCS Bowl. It's hard to make a BCS Bowl as a non-power team when you have 2 losses, especially in a hotly contested Mountain West where you still have yet to play Air Force. Also sitting at fringe contention are a 1-loss Chattanooga and a 1-loss Southern Illinois, the SoCon and Missouri Valley, respectively. I still hold that the two teams making it in outside the power conferences are the Mountain West champion, of course, and Rice. I know Pig Bear is very gung-ho on Columbia. Do you think there's going to be another BCS Buster, Danny?
Potentially, I think Liberty has a good chance of making it. I don't think they're the best chance of making that next BCS Busters team.
We'll see how Liberty does on Wednesday. Now, for our special presentation of this week, I want to take us through the BCS. Since it is week 8, we are now halfway through the 2KU season. As October is almost halfway done, the BCS gets closer and closer. I want to take us through. I had all 3 of us make BCS predictions for halfway through the season, much like we did last year and the year before. I'm going to do mine first. Danny will have his second, and Pig Bear will wrap us up. I'm going to start here with my teams in the Cotton Bowl. Well, I think right now the Big 12 champion is going to be Texas A&M. They proved how well they'll play with that win over Oklahoma State. I think I think they win the conference championship over BYU. Give me the Aggies here. And this is where I get the BCS buster. I think that it's going to be Rice. I like the Rice Owls. They're going to have the best resume. They're the most complete team in this field. I think they're first in line to be picked for a BCS spot. Onto the Rose Bowl, I have my runners up for the Big 12 and Pac-12, Penn State, and I think the next best record in the Pac-12 is going to be Oregon. I think they're going to finish very strong in spite of their loss. I don't think they're going to win the division, but I think they're going to keep it competitive. The Sugar Bowl is next. Tennessee, I have them as my SEC champ. I think they're still the best team in the conference. And I have them playing against the at-large of Oklahoma State. Even in spite of this loss, Oklahoma State is still the most well-rounded team in college football. I think that even if they can't win the conference, they will for certain make their third straight BCS appearance. The Peach Bowl, I have Cincinnati winning my Big East. The team 6-0. They've been torching through every defense that they've played. I think Cincinnati, outside of the big brands, might be one of the best teams in college football. I have them against Auburn. Auburn is I mentioned that the SEC is a grab bag outside of Tennessee. I think the biggest what if that I do believe in from the SEC will be Auburn. I think they're going to play very well and make the conference championship. Onto the Orange, where even in spite of their loss this week, I still think Florida State is the best team in the Atlantic. I like them to make it to the Orange Bowl. I'll have them playing against a third Big Ten team. I think Ohio State is going to be the one to represent in the Orange Bowl. The Fiesta Bowl, I'm going to get a little gutsy. I think San Jose State has what it takes to beat Air Force, if not the first time, maybe the second, to make it to the Fiesta Bowl. Meanwhile, I think the other team in that spot will be USC. I think the Big 12 or the Big 10 and Pac-12 send 3 teams to BCS bowling, and that gives me my national championship. The top 2 teams of the country, I think, are Michigan and Utah. All right, Danny, give us your BCS bowls.
Yeah, I first have the Big 12 champion being Texas A&M. They're going to be going to the Cotton Bowl. I think they will be playing against at-large North Carolina, who will be making an appearance in the ACC championship. For my Rose Bowl, I have Big 10 runner-up Penn State and Pac-12 runner-up UCLA. You could tell where the top 2 teams might be going, but I believe those 2 teams will be the runner-ups and will have the best records within the conference. I just think UCLA might beat out USC, but if USC beats UCLA, I think they'll be the ones to take that spot. In the Sugar, I think Tennessee is going to win the SEC. They'll be playing against at-large Oklahoma. That's right, I don't have Oklahoma State, I have Oklahoma. I believe the Sooners might actually have a good chance of beating the Cowboys this season and might want to prove themselves. Next up in the Big East, I have Big East champion going to the Peach Bowl, with that being Cincinnati. Who are they playing against? How about in-state rival Ohio State? That'll be a little fun matchup. Next up, we got the Orange Bowl. I have the ACC champion North Carolina State. I really like the Wolfpack at this point, and I think they might win out the conference. And I pit them up against Big 12 runner-up Kansas, not just because Kansas might have some history with oranges. Next up, we have the Fiesta Bowl with the Mountain West champion being Air Force. Who are they playing against? The Big East next best team, UCF. I think this one could be an interesting matchup of very high-flying offenses, and well, I believe UCF could potentially make themselves their own little spot there. And for the BCS championship, I think it's going to be Michigan, number 1 Michigan against number 2 Utah.
All right, Pig Bear, what are your BCS bowls looking like?
All right. Sorry. All right. Let's start off in the Cotton Bowl like y'all have. I also have Texas A&M winning, but I have Ohio State, the runner-up essentially. Well, the third place team from the Big Ten as my representative. So Texas A&M, Ohio State, pretty interesting matchup. While we all have the same Big Ten team for the Rose Bowl, we each have different teams. I've noticed I have Penn State versus Utah. I don't think Utah's a good team, but I'm not entirely sold on them to win the conference. But they definitely can make it to Pasadena for the Rose Bowl. For the Sugar Bowl, we all also have Tennessee, and I have another team that y'all both have in a New Year's Six game, but they're not a conference champion in my book. So I have Tennessee versus Cincinnati in the Sugar Bowl. So the Peach Bowl, I have a traditional Florida matchup being played in Georgia. That is UCF versus Florida State. In the Orange Bowl, I have the matchup of the light blue. The two teams nobody saw coming to be playing a New Year's Six Bowl this year. I have North Carolina versus Columbia. Columbia is my BCS buster. I am so sold on them at this point. In the Fiesta Bowl, I have Air Force versus Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State will make a third straight BCS game. I don't see them any possibility where they don't unless they just completely collapse. For national championship, I have Michigan versus USC. I think USC is the most well-rounded team in the Pac-12, and I think they have what it takes to win and sneak into the Natty.
A lot would have to happen for there to be a one-loss team with this season. There's a lot on the table. All right, now let's talk about our games of the week for Week 8. Starting with our one weekday game that we're highlighting on Wednesday, October 16th. Southern Miss at 4-2. They are coming off a loss to Rice, but they're heading out to Lynchburg to take on a 6-0 Liberty squad. The Flames are favored by 5.5. Give me Liberty to extend that to a 7th win. Danny?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Southern Miss at Liberty.
I think Liberty's going to win this game. I think Liberty is the better one of the two teams, and I think Liberty will come out on top in this.
Big Bear?
Liberty. Big.
Let it be known that Southern Miss does have a history of upsetting teams with BCS aspirations. Looking right at you, Houston. Moving on to the Saturday of that week. Starting off, what day is it other than the third Saturday in October? Alabama at 3-3. We were expecting them to be the favorite entering this matchup, but 5-1 Tennessee is a 3.5-point favorite in Knoxville. I like Tennessee to win this. Danny?
Give me the Vols and Rocky Top to win this game.
Big Bear?
I think Tennessee wins, but by about the spread. So yeah, Tennessee close.
Up next, they almost upset Penn State in Bloomington. Can they try and do the same with Michigan? Indiana, 5-1, hosting the 6-0 Wolverines, the number 1 team in the country, are favored by 8.5. I like Michigan in this one to remain undefeated. Danny?
Give me the Wolverines. I think they're going to just be too much for the Hoosiers to handle.
Big Bear?
Give me Michigan.
Up next, 2 ACC contenders this season. Florida State at 5-1. Recoiling after their first loss of the season, they head to Chapel Hill to take on North Carolina, the Tar Heels. Tar Heels are also sitting at 5-1. Florida State favored by 2.5 on the road, but give me North Carolina to win it. Danny?
Give me which game?
Florida State,
Sorry.
UNC.
Give me the Tar Heels to win this one. I think the Tar Heels will beat the Noles and then prove themselves to be a potential winner for the ACC.
Big Bear?
Carolina's a battle-tested team, and I think they'll show that. Carolina by about 2 touchdowns and a huge upset.
Up next, out in Atlanta, Georgia Tech, now at 4-2, hosting the 2-4 Hurricanes, who gave Wake Forest a bunch of trouble in their game. Tech is favored by 10.5. I don't think this spread is entirely accurate, but give me the Yellow Jackets. Danny?
Give me the Yellow Jackets as well. Think they're going to beat up on this Miami team, and I know Miami's going to put at least a fight, but I do think Georgia Tech will win this one.
Big Bear?
Give me Miami in an upset.
Up next, 5-1 Missouri heads to Norman to take on a 6-0 Oklahoma squad, favored by 8.5 in this one. Who you have, Danny?
Give me Tulane. I think Tulane. Oh no, wait.
That's the
Sorry,
next
wrong
one.
game. Yep. Give me the Sooners. Boomer Sooner.
Pig Bear.
Gotta agree with Danny. Boomer Sooner.
Up next, now Tulane is on the docket. The 5-1 Green Wave hosting Florida. Florida at 4-2 are favored by 3.5 on the road, though. I think Tulane, though, is going to make this tricky. Give me Florida, but close. Danny?
Give me Tulane.
Pig Bear?
Roll damn wave. Give me Tulane.
Up next, Auburn, fresh off a win over rival Georgia, heads to Fayetteville to take on a dark horse or dark hog in Arkansas. The 4-2 Razorbacks are 6.5-point underdogs against the Tigers, who are 5-1 entering this game. I like Auburn to keep this win streak going. Danny?
Woo pig. I think Arkansas will win this game. Close.
Pig Bear?
Give me Auburn, but Auburn close.
Up next, the battle for the megaphone. 5-1 Michigan State heads to South Bend. Notre Dame reeling from their loss to Michigan. Trying to get back in the black after losing their last couple of games. Michigan State favored by 8.5 on the road. Give me Sparty to win this. Danny?
I actually think Notre Dame will pull off the upset in this game. This feels like it's got upset potential all over this game, and I think the Irish will capitalize on that.
Pig Bear?
Repeat the teams. I dozed off. I'm so sorry.
Michigan State, Notre Dame.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Give me Notre Dame getting things back on track. I'm so sorry about that.
You better stay awake, because West Virginia's on the docket. Up next, the 4-2 Mountaineers heading to Cincinnati to take on the juggernaut, the 6-0 Bearcats. Cincy are 13.5-point favorites in this one. I like Cincinnati to win this. They've been torching everybody in the Big East. I think they get this done. Danny?
Give me Cincy. I think Cincy will also win this one as well.
Pig Bear?
Cincinnati big.
Up next, Danny V's stream game of the week. We're going back to the Pac-12 after dark. 6-0 UCLA. Pardon me, gotta check my script. 6-0 UCLA, the number 16 team in the nation, heads on the road to Arizona to take on a 5-1 Wildcats team, just hovering outside of the top 25. A win would certainly catapult them into the conversation. UCLA are 5.5-point favorites in this one. I like Arizona, though. Arizona's been a team that no one's talked about. I think AU keeps the race interesting. Though ultimately, I think the Pac-12 South still runs through Los Angeles. Danny?
Give me the Bruins. I think UCLA will win this game and will prove that LA should be where the capital of the Pac is.
Danny? Or Pig Bear?
Give me Arizona.
Arizona as well. This was supposed to be our stream game starting the season, but Baylor has fallen to 2-4 this year as they host a 5-1 Oklahoma State, reeling from their first loss of the year. OK State are 12.5-point favorites. Baylor plays everybody close whenever you head down to McLean Stadium. But I like Oklahoma State to rebound and improve to 6-1. Danny?
Give me Oklahoma State. I think they're gonna beat up on this Baylor team that's currently reeling.
Pig Bear?
Give me Oklahoma State.
All right, we wrap the rapid fire games with a matchup between two of the best WAC schools. Idaho and Louisiana Tech are both 5-1. I think whoever wins this, you might start seeing them creep up on the polls. Idaho, I believe, did appear once on our polls. The Vandals, of course, have that win over Boise on their resume. That's going to be very interesting. Louisiana Tech, they haven't really had any huge resume wins. Their one loss came to a ranked Kansas team. But I think La Tech might be one of the best teams that no one's talking about this season. The Bulldogs are favored by 6.5 over Idaho. Give me Louisiana Tech. Danny?
Give me Louisiana Tech as well. They're hosting Idaho, and it's going to be a fun matchup for them.
Pig Bear?
Idaho in a fun one.
This is going to be one of the best looking games in college football, no doubt. But now we head to the 2KU Game of the Week from Columbus, Ohio. Number 4 Ohio State in their highest ranking. We've seen them in years. In their way, the challengers coming in from Iowa City. The 6-0 Hawkeyes are number 20 in the country, probably invigorated by Texas A&M's upset of atop Oklahoma State. Iowa has been playing gritty, physical football and doing something we haven't seen them do much. They're breaking their own stereotype and playing some good offense this season. I think the Hawkeyes are for sure a dark horse in the Big Ten. But how good are Iowa and Ohio State? We're going to find out on Saturday. Ohio State, 8.5-point favorites in this one. I think Ohio State's going to have some trouble in this. I like the Buckeyes to win, but I don't think it's going to be by 8.5. Danny?
Give me the Buckeyes. They're playing at home. They're playing against, admittedly, a good Iowa team, but I do think Ohio State will have their dominant offense win this game.
I think Iowa's been dancing through the raindrops thus far in terms of their scheduling. Pig Bear, send us home. Iowa, Ohio State.
Give me Ohio State here in a close one. Should be a really good game.
I said it before we started streaming. This game has potential game of the year written all over it. That's going to do it for us here. Thank you all so much for watching. Tune in on Saturday for this game and join the Type A Joy 101 Discord server for some exclusive action, including UCLA and Arizona. That'll do it for us here. Thank you all so much for watching, and so long from the 2KU.